The ultimate threat. Why the man who rejects money terrifies society. Imagine a man who looks at money, the very foundation of our modern world, and simply rejects it. Think for a moment about how radical that is. We live in a society where everything is measured, valued, and exchanged through currency. It is the invisible thread that ties together governments, corporations, and even personal relationships. From the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep, money dictates our choices, our opportunities, and even our dreams. But what happens when a man stands up and says, "No, I will not play this game. I will not be enslaved by paper, numbers, and systems that pretend to define my worth"? Ponder that question deeply, because throughout history, those who have rejected money have often shaken the very pillars of society. Not with violence, not with armies, but with an idea so dangerous that institutions tremble before it. The idea that life, value, and meaning cannot be reduced to currency. This is not simply an act of rebellion. It is a direct confrontation with the essence of power itself. Our societies praise freedom, independence, and individuality. Yet when someone truly dares to step outside of the monetary system, they are labeled as dangerous, unstable, or even insane. Why? Could it be that rejecting money is one of the most subversive acts imaginable? Could it be that society fears such individuals not because they are weak, but because they are too strong, because they cannot be controlled? Before we go further, make sure you subscribe to this channel, leave a like, and share this video with those who you believe need to hear this message. What you are about to discover may challenge everything you thought you knew about society, freedom, and your own relationship with money. And I promise you this, the final revelation, the last and most powerful truth, will be the one that changes your perspective forever. Now, let us return to our question. The myth of the universal story, exposing money as illusion. To understand why the man who rejects money is the greatest threat to society, we must first realize how deeply money is tied to our psychology. Money is not only an economic tool, it is also a powerful symbol, a story that we all agree to believe in. As Yuval Noah Harari points out, money is perhaps the most universal and successful story ever told. More binding than language, more universal than religion. It allows strangers to cooperate, nations to trade, and empires to rise. But herein lies the danger. If money is a story, then rejecting it is refusing to participate in the grand narrative that holds society together. A man who lives without money is like a mirror that forces us to question the truth of our own existence. He reminds us that what we consider indispensable, financial security, the chase for the next dollar, may in fact be an illusion. That realization terrifies institutions built on control, hierarchy, and economic dependency. Think of the great visionaries who challenged the dominion of money. Diogenes the Cynic, the Greek philosopher, famously lived in a barrel, owning almost nothing, mocking the excesses of Athens, and even ridiculing Alexander the Great to his face. What made him so powerful? Not wealth, but the fact that he could not be bribed, bought, or intimidated by material possessions. His rejection of money and status was an act of defiance that revealed the fragility of those who clung to riches. Henry David Thoreau retreated to Walden Pond to live deliberately, away from the machinery of commerce. His experiment was not about escaping society, but about exposing how deeply entangled our freedom is with economic dependence. To reject money, even temporarily, is to reclaim power over one's own life. But society cannot easily tolerate such independence. For a world driven by money, the greatest threat is not poverty, it is indifference. A man who does not desire what others worship cannot be manipulated by promises, advertisements, or fears of scarcity. He cannot be lured by luxury or trapped by debt. He is free, and in that freedom he becomes untouchable. Ask yourself, what would happen if more people began to live like this? If the masses collectively realized that money is not the only measure of life's value?
The entire machinery of modern civilization, which survives on participation and consent, would begin to collapse under its own weight. This is why the man who rejects money is seen as a threat. He destabilizes the system by showing us that participation is optional and that the cage we live in is in fact one we have chosen to remain in. The architecture of fear. Money as a controlled addiction. To truly understand the depth of this threat, we must examine the emotional bedrock of the monetary system: fear. Money is an ingenious mechanism that transforms the primal, unmanageable fear of uncertainty into a measurable, controllable fear of scarcity. The system does not eliminate fear, it channels it. It says, "You should be afraid of not having enough, but if you adhere to the rules, work, earn, save, consume, we will give you a temporary solution." This solution is the bank balance, the paycheck, the debt capacity. But this relief is a calculated addiction. Consider the role of debt. Debt is not merely an economic transaction. It is a psychological handcuff. When an individual is in debt, whether mortgage, student loan, or credit card balance, their freedom of choice is immediately compromised. Their time is no longer their own. It belongs to the payment schedule. Debt guarantees compliance. It ensures that the worker stays on the treadmill, afraid to question the purpose of their labor, because the alternative, financial ruin, is too terrifying. The man who rejects money rejects this entire architecture of fear. He consciously chooses to face the raw, unbuffered uncertainty of existence, knowing
that true security lies not in a bank account but in adaptability, the ability to learn and change quickly, community, reliance on human reciprocity and skill, not currency, resilience, the philosophical strength to accept loss and change. When a person proves that they can survive and thrive without recourse to the fear of scarcity, the most fundamental lever of social control breaks. He becomes a living experiment, proving that control is not inevitable. The system needs the individual to be afraid. The man without money has simply decided to stop being afraid of the things money claims to protect. The psychology of dependence, breaking the deepest habit. Money is a form of collective hypnosis. From childhood, we are taught to equate success with financial security, measure intelligence by income, and calculate worth in terms of possessions. The moment someone steps outside of this equation, they expose the invisible chains that bind the rest of us. The French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu observed that the structures of society are upheld not only by force, but by invisible cultural habits, what he called habitus. Money, then, is not just a medium of exchange, but a habit of thought. To reject money is to break the deepest habit of all. To say, I will not define my existence by numbers. I will not let my imagination be colonized by the illusion of scarcity. Yet, scarcity is the myth upon which the global system thrives. Modern economies rely on convincing us that there is never enough time, never enough wealth, never enough security. Fear drives consumption, fear fuels ambition, and fear keeps people obedient to systems they secretly resent. When one man rejects money, he rejects this fear. He shows through his actions that survival and meaning can be found outside of markets and banks. History provides striking examples of this power. Mahatma Gandhi lived in radical simplicity. His spinning wheel and simple clothing were not just personal choices but political weapons. By reducing his dependence on money and foreign goods, he revealed the absurdity of colonial exploitation and inspired millions to resist it. His rejection of money was more powerful than armies. It dismantled an empire.
Leo Tolstoy, the great Russian novelist, renounced his wealth later in life. His rejection of money was a statement that true moral authority cannot be bought. Both figures remind us that turning away from money is not a retreat from responsibility, but a confrontation with the deepest forms of injustice. Now let us look at the other side. Why does society react with hostility when someone abandons money? Because it feels like betrayal. Imagine a worker who labors day after day, sacrificing time, health, and dreams for financial stability. When he sees someone living without money, peacefully and contentedly, the sight can provoke anger. Not because the moneyless man is wrong, but because he reveals
a truth that is too painful to accept, that much of our suffering is unnecessary. This is why rejecting money is considered dangerous. It undermines the consensus reality. Societies operate on shared illusions. We agree to believe in borders, in governments, in currencies. These illusions work only if everyone consents. The moment individuals step away, the fragile web begins to unravel. The monoculture of value, rediscovering true wealth. The greatest lie money tells us is that it is the sole measure of value. Our society enforces a monoculture of value where complex human endeavors, wisdom, skill, compassion, time, must all be converted into a single financial metric to be considered real. The man who rejects money challenges this monoculture by proving that alternative, non-monetary currencies are both functional and richer. Creative value, the sheer joy and utility derived from creating something, a meal, a tool, a piece of art, without the immediate expectation of financial return. This is the internal measure of fulfillment, which money seeks to replace with an external price tag. Relational value, the worth generated through mutual aid, trust, and deep human connection. When money is removed, transactions are replaced by reciprocity. If you fix my roof, I teach your child. This creates stronger social bonds than a simple cash exchange, making the community less fragile. Experiential value, the richness of life measured in experiences, knowledge, and moments of awe rather than possessions. By stepping out, the moneyless man restores these non-financial values to their rightful place. He shows that true wealth is an ecology of value, not a single dominant number in a bank account. This is a direct threat to the economic system because it suggests that much of the unpaid labor of care, creativity, and community building, which money largely ignores, is in fact the real engine of human flourishing. If people begin to prioritize relational value over financial value, the foundation of the profit-driven market, the relentless pursuit of growth, loses its philosophical justification. The man who rejects money is essentially asking, why are you so poor that the only thing you have is money? The rejection of control. Money as the language of power. If rejecting money is such a powerful act, what does it do to the very notion of power itself? Money is not merely a medium of exchange, it is also a language of power, perhaps the most dominant one in our world today. Yet, the man who rejects money no longer speaks this language. He cannot be persuaded by salaries, promotions, or financial rewards. He cannot be threatened by fines or the fear of bankruptcy. He has stepped outside the boundaries of the most powerful control mechanism humanity has ever created. To the structures of society, such a person is unpredictable, and unpredictability is always feared by those in power. Institutions enforce order by creating systems of incentive and punishment. This system works perfectly until someone decides they do not care about money. What can be offered to them? What can be taken from them? A man who does not want what others crave becomes immune to manipulation. This is why he is considered dangerous. He has made himself ungovernable. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche spoke of the free spirit, the individual who dares to live by his own values rather than those imposed by society. The man who rejects money is a modern embodiment of that free spirit.
His refusal to participate in the economic order is a philosophical declaration that human life cannot be measured in coins or bills. In a world where everything is monetized, our time, our attention, even our personal data, what happens when someone chooses to step outside? Airborne, do you need a luxury car to be respected? Sentient, do you need branded clothing to be loved? Do you need a large salary to feel fulfilled? By rejecting money, one refuses to play this endless game of consumption and comparison, and that rejection shakes the very core of society, because society survives on desire. The French psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan argued that desire is never fully satisfied. It is always directed towards something just out of reach. Modern capitalism has perfected the art of exploiting this. It creates endless desires and offers money as the bridge to fulfill them. But the fulfillment never lasts. The man who rejects money is the one who steps off this treadmill. And by stepping off, he forces the rest of us to see how absurd it is. The man who rejects money is also confronting our deepest fears. Fear of insecurity, fear of irrelevance, fear of death. Money is often used to mask these fears and give us the illusion of control. To live without money is to face life in its rawest form, without the buffer of financial safety nets. That kind of courage is unsettling to those who depend on money to shield them from reality. The solitude of the sovereign, the price and power of freedom. The man who rejects money pays a heavy social price. He willingly embraces solitude and misunderstanding. He is an outsider, often ridiculed as a dreamer, a radical, or a fool. But this very isolation is the source of his profound power. To be truly sovereign, to be completely unpurchasable, requires the willingness to lose what others value most: social approval, career status, and material comfort. The system cannot threaten him with poverty because he has already accepted it. It cannot bribe him with status because he has already renounced it. He has, in effect, preemptively disarmed the mechanisms of social control. This is the solitude of the sovereign. This concept is essential for understanding the threat. Immunity to bribery. The ultimate power is the inability to be bought. A person who has successfully defined his worth outside of the monetary system cannot be turned from his principles by any financial offer.
A weaponized example. His solitary existence becomes a potent visual symbol. It whispers a forbidden idea. If he can do it, maybe I can too. This silent contagion is far more dangerous than any political manifesto because it works on the level of individual consciousness. The unshakable core, the constant pressure and ridicule he faces forces him to develop an unshakable inner core of self-definition. He becomes immune to external validation because he has made his peace with his own choices. The systems of power rely on the individual being weak, compliant, and motivated by external reward. The man who rejects money has proven himself to be strong, self-governed, and motivated by internal principle. He is a glitch in the matrix, an exception that threatens to expose the rule as an arbitrary construct. His life is a living paradox that demands that everyone else question their own sacrifice. The final revelation, the threat of sovereign consciousness. We have explored how rejecting money destabilizes society, undermines systems of control, and reveals illusions. But now we arrive at the most important truth of all, the one society fears the most. The man who rejects money is not merely a rebel or an eccentric. He is a living demonstration of a possibility that terrifies the very core of civilization. The possibility that human beings are capable of living free, meaningful, and fulfilled lives without the chains of money at all. Think carefully about what this means. If a single individual can embody this truth, What would happen if entire communities embraced it? What if freedom was no longer defined by the size of a bank account, but by the richness of one's inner life? The true threat is not economic collapse. It is awakening. Awakening to the realization that the chains we wear are self-imposed, and that life is far larger, richer, and more profound than the narrow lanes of financial pursuit. This awakening is contagious. It spreads not through propaganda, but through example. When you see someone living free from the dictates of money, you begin to question the inevitability of your own dependence. This is why prophets, sages, and mystics throughout history have often lived with little or no money. Jesus overturned the tables of the money changers, declaring the sacred could not be bought. The Buddha walked away from his palace, choosing simplicity. St. Francis of Assisi renounced his inheritance, embracing poverty. Each of these figures was feared by the institutions of their time because they revealed truths that threatened the very order of the world. The final and most powerful revelation, then, is this: the man who rejects money is the greatest threat to society, because he reveals that society itself is not the highest authority. Money is not the ultimate master. The ultimate authority is the human spirit, the indomitable, untouchable essence of life that no currency can buy. To live in recognition of this truth is to live as a sovereign being, beyond control, beyond manipulation, beyond fear. And that is the one thing no system of power can tolerate. So reflect deeply on this message. The rejection of money is not about poverty. It is about discovering the highest form of freedom, the freedom to define value on your own terms, to live authentically, and to awaken others by your example. This is why the man who rejects money will always be feared, and this is why he will always be free.